Daniel Reed had never seen so many different life forms in one room before. The lecture hall at Galactic Academy stretched wide and tall, filled with students whose ancestors came from worlds he could barely pronounce. Some breathed methane through filters. Others communicated in color patterns across their skin. A few didn't even have what he would call bodies, just fields of energy held together in vaguely person-shaped containers. He sat in the back row, trying not to draw attention. Being the first human at the most prestigious xenobiology institution in known space came with enough pressure already. The acceptance letter had arrived 8 months ago, causing celebration across Earth's scientific community. Now, surrounded by species who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, Daniel felt incredibly young. Professor Quinn glided to the front of the hall. The avian instructor stood nearly 7 feet tall, covered in deep blue feathers that shimmered under the lights. Her species, the awaken, had been studying life across the galaxy for longer than humans had been using written language. She tapped a wing claw against her podium, and the room fell silent. Today we examine the fundamental laws of evolutionary biology, Professor Quinn announced. Her voice came through translation devices everyone wore, rendering her musical tones into whatever language each student understood best. Open your text to Chapter 17. Daniel pulled up the holographic display. The Galactic Standard Textbook of Evolution materialized in front of him. Thousands of pages of accumulated knowledge from hundreds of worlds. Chapter 17 began with a bold declaration: the immutable principles of predator-prey relations. These principles have been tested across 4,000 planetary ecosystems, Professor Quinn continued. They hold true whether a world orbits a red dwarf or a blue giant, whether life arose in ammonia oceans or silicon deserts. The laws are universal. She highlighted the third principle. Daniel read it twice to make sure he understood correctly. Apex predators cannot form voluntary symbiotic relationships with prey species in natural evolutionary pathways. Such arrangements require artificial genetic modification or technological intervention. A student near the front raised a tentacle. Professor, what about the hive nursers of Tau Ceti 4? They protect smaller species. Genetic engineering 15,000 years ago, Professor Quinn replied smoothly. Their ancestors were purely predatory. The modification is well documented. Natural evolution does not produce such arrangements. Predators hunt, prey flee. This is the foundation of biological development across the cosmos. Daniel shifted in his seat. He thought about the videos he had watched before leaving Earth. Thought about the rescue centers and wildlife sanctuaries. Thought about the farms where different species lived side by side. Not through force, but through something the textbook apparently said was impossible. Any questions? Professor Quinn asked. Daniel's hand went up before he could stop himself. Every student in the hall turned to look at him. He felt his face grow warm. Yes, the human student. Daniel, correct? Yes, Professor. I was wondering about Earth's evolutionary history. We have examples that might contradict the third principle. The hall erupted in clicking, chirping, and buzzing sounds. Laughter, Daniel realized. Different species expressing amusement in their own ways. Professor Quinn's feathers ruffled slightly. Mr. Reed, Earth has only been studied for 37 of your years. Your world's biology is still being cataloged. I assure you the principles in this textbook have been verified across millions of years of research. If your world had a genuine exception, it would have been noted by the survey teams. But Professor, we will discuss Earth's unique characteristics another time. She cut him off gently but firmly. For now, let us focus on established science. The laws are clear. Predators do not befriend prey. Apex hunters do not voluntarily reduce their aggression without genetic intervention. These facts are as reliable as gravity itself. Daniel sat back down. Around him, students whispered to each other. He caught fragments of conversation through the translation feed. Typical newcomer species. Think they are special? Earth biology is probably just standard carbon-based development. Nothing new. Humans always believe they are exceptional. The survey reports noted this tendency. His lab partner, a crystalline being named Lux, leaned over. Light refracted through their geometric body as they spoke. Do not take it personally. Every new species joining the Academy believes their homeworld breaks the rules. The textbook has been refined over millennia. If there were genuine exceptions, we would know by now. What if the survey teams missed something? Daniel asked quietly. Lux's internal light pulsed in a pattern Daniel had learned meant amusement. The survey teams are thorough. They map genetics, study ecosystems, review evolutionary histories. They do not miss major contradictions to fundamental principles. The lecture continued. Professor Quinn moved through example after example of how predator-prey relationships worked across the galaxy. Every case fit neatly into the established framework. Every species that seemed to break the rules turned out to have been genetically modified or misidentified, or was not actually in a predator-prey relationship at all. Daniel took notes, but his mind wandered. He thought about his application to the Academy, thought about what he had written in his personal statement about wanting to bridge the gap between Earth's biology and galactic understanding. The admissions committee had probably found it charming. Naive enthusiasm from a primitive world. But he knew what he had seen on Earth, knew what lived in homes across every continent, knew the history that went back tens of thousands of years, long before humans had even developed agriculture. When class ended, students filed out in clusters. Daniel packed his display slowly, waiting for the crowd to thin. "Mr. Reed." Professor Quinn's voice stopped him at the door. "A word, please." He approached the podium nervously. The professor looked down at him with large, intelligent eyes that had probably forgotten more about biology than Earth's entire scientific community had yet discovered. "I appreciate enthusiasm," she said, "but be careful about challenging established knowledge too quickly. The textbook represents the combined wisdom of hundreds of species over thousands of years. Your world is new to galactic civilization. There is much to learn before you can meaningfully contribute to these discussions." "I understand, Professor. But what if I could show you something? Something from Earth that might be worth examining?" Professor Quinn's feathers settled into what Daniel guessed was curiosity. "What sort of something?" "A living example. I brought a companion with me from Earth, a small creature. I think you might find it interesting." "Very well. Bring your specimen to the xenobiology lab tomorrow. We can examine it properly." Her tone suggested she expected to find nothing remarkable. "But Mr. Reed, prepare yourself for the possibility that what seems exceptional on your world is quite ordinary in the broader context of galactic life." Daniel nodded and left the hall. As he walked through the corridors of the Academy, past students from 1,000 worlds, he allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow, Professor Quinn would meet Scout, and then they would see just how ordinary Earth really was. The xenobiology lab smelled like a dozen different atmospheres trying to coexist in one space. Daniel walked through the entrance carrying a medium-sized travel crate, the kind used for transporting live specimens across star systems. Inside, something shuffled and made a soft whining sound. Professor Quinn waited by an examination table, along with 3 other instructors Daniel recognized from various departments. Apparently word had spread about the human student who claimed to have something interesting. Lux stood near the back, their crystalline form refracting the lab lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. Arya, a reptilian student from Daniel's evolutionary theory class, lounged against a counter with her arms crossed. Her scales were deep green with gold highlights, and her eyes held the predatory focus of a born hunter. She had been one of the loudest voices mocking Daniel yesterday. "So what exotic Earth creature did you bring, human?" she asked. "Something with acid blood? Telepathic abilities? Please tell me it is at least poisonous." Daniel set the crate on the floor and knelt beside it. "Nothing that dramatic. Just something that lives with humans. Something common on Earth." He opened the door. A medium-sized dog bounded out, tail wagging furiously. Scout was a mixed breed, part shepherd and part something else, with a brown and black coat and intelligent eyes. The dog immediately began sniffing around the lab, then sat obediently when Daniel gave a hand signal. The room fell silent. Professor Quinn approached slowly, her head tilting at an angle that suggested confusion. "This is your specimen." "This small creature?" "This is Scout," Daniel said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Scout leaned into the touch, tail thumping against the floor. "She's a dog. They live with humans." One of the other professors, a being made of what looked like liquid metal, flowed closer. "It appears mammalian, quadrupedal, relatively small compared to your own size. Is it a prey animal you keep for food?" "No, she's family," Daniel replied. Arya snorted. "Family? It is an animal. She's both." Daniel gestured for Scout to lie down. The dog complied immediately. Dogs have lived with humans for over 30,000 years. Maybe longer. We're still finding older evidence. Professor Quinn extended a wing claw toward Scout. The dog sniffed it curiously, then licked it once. The professor jerked back in surprise. It touched me with its mouth. Is that aggression? That's affection, Daniel explained. She likes you. Impossible. Professor Quinn pulled up a holographic scanner and began examining Scout from a distance. Let me see. Dental structure indicates, oh my, this is a predator. Look at these canines. The jaw strength readings. This creature is built to hunt and kill. The other professors crowded around the display. Measurements and genetic data scrolled past as the scanner did its work. Confirmed predator biology, the liquid metal professor announced. But readings show domestication markers. Genetic engineering? No engineering, Daniel said firmly. Natural evolution. Well, natural selection anyway. Humans didn't have genetic engineering technology 30,000 years ago. We barely had stone tools. Professor Quinn's feathers ruffled in clear agitation. Then this makes no sense. According to the textbook, predators cannot be domesticated without genetic modification. It is Principle 23, subsection 4. I have taught this for 40 years. Arya pushed off from the counter and walked over. She crouched in front of Scout, studying the dog with predatory intensity. Scout looked back at her calmly, showing no fear. It does not act like a predator, Arya observed. Where is the territorial aggression? The dominance display? I am clearly a threat, yet it just sits there. She knows the difference between a threat and a new friend, Daniel said. Scout, shake hands. The dog lifted her paw. Arya stared at it, then slowly extended her clawed hand. They shook. Scout's tail wagged harder. This is deeply unsettling, Arya muttered. Lux moved closer, light pulsing with curiosity. The genetic data shows it shares significant DNA with wild predators on Earth. Wolves, the file says. Pack hunters. Apex predators in their environment. How did this transformation occur? Daniel pulled up his personal display and projected images into the lab's central viewing area. Ancient cave paintings appeared, showing humans and wolves hunting together. Archaeological sites where human and wolf bones were buried side by side. Genetic studies tracking the gradual split between wolves and dogs. We think it started when some wolves were less afraid of humans, Daniel explained. They came near our camps for scraps. Over time, the friendliest ones stayed closer. They helped us hunt. We fed them. Both species benefited. Eventually, they became dogs. Voluntary association between predator species, Professor Quinn whispered. Mutual benefit without genetic engineering. This contradicts established theory. Maybe the theory needs updating, Daniel suggested gently. One of the other professors, an insectoid being with multiple eye clusters, clicked in agitation. One example from one world does not invalidate thousands of years of research. This could be an anomaly, a statistical outlier. Scout isn't the only example, Daniel said. He changed the projection to show cats lounging in homes, horses carrying riders, falcons hunting with human partners. Earth has dozens of species that formed these bonds with humans. Predators, prey animals, everything in between. Professor Quinn examined each image carefully. Her beak clicked softly, a sign of deep thought in her species. The textbook specifically states this is impossible through natural evolutionary pathways. Every known case of predator domestication involves genetic modification performed by advanced civilizations. Then Earth is different, Daniel said simply. Or the textbook is incomplete, Lux added quietly. The crystalline being's statement hung in the air like a challenge. Arya stood up from where she had been examining Scout. I want to run tests. Behavioral analysis. See if this creature truly maintains predator instincts while showing this supposed affection. That's fine, Daniel agreed. Scout loves games. Over the next hour, they put Scout through various exercises. The dog demonstrated her ability to track scents across the lab. Following trails that the professors laid down, she responded to dozens of commands from Daniel. Everything from simple sights and stays to complex sequences of actions. She played fetch with enthusiasm, her predatory chase instinct clear in how she pursued the thrown objects. But then she would return and drop the item at Daniel's feet, looking up with obvious joy. Waiting for praise, seeking connection. The behavior patterns make no biological sense, Professor Quinn admitted finally. It maintains hunting instincts but directs them into play. It shows pack loyalty to a different species. It has been selectively bred, yes, but the foundation was laid through behavioral evolution. not genetic engineering. Daniel sat on the floor, and Scout immediately climbed into his lap, despite being too large to fit comfortably. The dog rested her head against his chest. On Earth, this is normal, Daniel said. Millions of dogs live with humans like this. They're not tools or food sources. They're companions, partners. We evolved together. This changes things, Luck said. If one fundamental principle in the textbook is wrong, what else might be incorrect? Professor Quinn looked at Scout for a long moment. The dog gazed back, then yawned widely, showing all those predatory teeth before settling down for a nap in Daniel's arms. I need to consult with the faculty, the professor said finally. This discovery requires proper investigation. Mr. Reed, would you be willing to present your findings to a larger assembly? Allow more extensive research? Of course, Daniel replied. That's why I came here. To share what Earth knows and learn from everyone else. Arya made a sound that might have been respect. I apologize for mocking you yesterday, human. Your small scavenger is more interesting than I expected. She's not a scavenger, Daniel corrected gently. She's a friend. Scout snored softly, completely at ease, surrounded by alien beings in a lab far from Earth. Daniel smiled and stroked her fur, wondering what other established facts the galaxy was about to reconsider. Research authorization came through faster than Daniel expected. Within 3 days, Professor Quinn had assembled a team of 12 specialists from different departments. They commandeered an entire wing of the Xenobiology building for what they officially called the Earth Domestication Study. Daniel found himself in a conference room that had been hastily converted into a command center. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing everything from Scout's genetic code to archaeological data transmitted from Earth. The dog herself lay under the main table, content to nap while aliens debated the nature of her existence. Arya had thrown herself into the research with unexpected enthusiasm. She pulled up another display, this one showing ancient DNA samples that Earth scientists had sent through the quantum communication network. Look at this timeline, she said, her claws tracing the evolutionary divergence. Wolves and dogs split approximately 30,000 years ago. But the really strange part is how fast the changes happened. In evolutionary terms, this is like watching a mountain form in a single day. Lux's crystalline form pulsed with different colors as they processed data. The genetic changes are minimal, mostly behavioral. These dogs still carry 98% wolf DNA. Yet their behavior toward humans is completely different from wild wolves. That's the point, Daniel explained. It wasn't about changing what they were. It was about choosing which individual stayed close to humans. The friendly ones had puppies. Those puppies were friendly too. Over generations, dogs became a separate species. Professor Quinn studied a chart showing bite force measurements, but they retained predatory capabilities. Scout's jaw strength could easily injure you, yet she controls this instinct. The textbook says predators cannot be trusted near vulnerable members of other species. It is too contrary to their nature. Daniel called Scout out from under the table. The dog stretched and trotted over. He gave her a hand signal and she lay down with her belly exposed, tail wagging. This is submission behavior, he said. Trust. She's showing she won't hurt me even though she could. Dogs do this naturally with humans they love. An insectoid researcher named Clicktor observed through multiple eye lenses. We brought data from my homeworld. We attempted to domesticate a predator species 600 years ago using genetic engineering. It took 2 centuries and resulted in a creature that barely functions. No initiative, reduced intelligence, completely dependent on caretakers. Your dogs maintain their intelligence and instincts while still forming these bonds. I do not understand how. Maybe because it was their choice, Daniel suggested. The wolves that became dogs chose to stay near humans. We didn't force them. Choice implies consciousness, Professor Quinn objected. Advanced decision-making beyond simple stimulus response. Dogs are conscious, Daniel said firmly. Maybe not like we are, but they think and feel and make decisions. Arya pulled up another file. I have been reading Earth's records. Your history with dogs goes beyond hunting partners. You use them to guard your young, to protect your homes, to comfort you when sad. There are documented cases of dogs sacrificing themselves to save humans. That's true, Daniel confirmed. There are millions of stories like that. But why? Lux asked, genuine confusion in their translated voice. What evolutionary advantage does a predator gain by protecting a different species? Daniel thought about how to explain it. Food and shelter at first, safety in numbers. But over time, I think it became something else. Dogs evolved to need us emotionally, and we evolved to need them too. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about connection. Professor Quinn made a note on her display. This emotional component appears repeatedly in Earth's data. You assign feelings to these animals. Love, loyalty, happiness. Are you certain this is not just projection of your own emotions? We're certain, Daniel replied. We've studied dog cognition extensively. They have emotions, different from ours maybe, but real. Clicktor buzzed in what the translator rendered as skepticism. I have reviewed 23 other cases from the galactic database where species claimed emotional bonds with animals. All were either religious beliefs, genetic engineering results, or simple misinterpretation of instinctive behavior. Then Earth is the 24th case, Daniel said, and maybe the first real one. The research team worked through the day, breaking only when someone remembered that biological beings needed food. Daniel ordered supplies from Earth through the Academy's requisition system. When the delivery arrived, he unpacked kibble designed specifically for dogs, treats shaped like bones, and toys that squeaked. The alien researchers watched in fascination as Scout got excited about a rubber ball, bouncing around the room with it in her mouth. She has been fed, Arya observed. She is not hungry. The ball has no nutritional value. Why does it make her happy? Because playing makes her happy, Daniel said. Dogs like having fun. Fun. Professor Quinn repeated the word as if tasting something strange. A predator experiencing joy from non-survival-related activity. This is unprecedented. Lux accessed another database. Actually, I am finding similar behavior in Earth's other domesticated species. Cats playing with string, horses running for pleasure, birds singing in captivity. Your world's animals engage in recreational behavior at much higher rates than wild animals on other planets. Maybe because they don't have to spend all their energy surviving, Daniel suggested. When humans take care of them, they have time and energy for other things. The implications of that statement seemed to ripple through the research team. Professor Quinn's feathers ruffled as she processed the idea. You are suggesting that domestication does not diminish these creatures but liberates them? That they gain something beyond mere survival? I think so, Daniel said. Dogs get food, shelter, medical care, and companionship. They give us the same companionship back, plus protection, help with work, emotional support. Both species benefit. Clicktor pulled up the textbook section on symbiotic relationships. This does not fit any established category. It is not parasitism, not commensalism, not mutualism as we define it. This is something else entirely. Arya had been quiet for a while, reviewing data on her personal display. Now she looked up with what Daniel had learned to recognize as her thinking expression. I found something interesting in the survey reports from Earth. The initial team noted humans living with various animals, but classified them all as livestock or working animals. They missed the emotional component completely because they were not looking for it. They assumed Earth was standard biology. Standard biology does not include this, Professor Quinn said, gesturing at Scout, who had fallen asleep with her head on Daniel's foot. We need to expand the study. I am requesting permission to access Earth's full biological database. Every domesticated species, every case study, all of it. Over the next week, data flooded in from Earth. The research team reviewed case after case of animals living alongside humans. Guard dogs protecting children, therapy dogs comforting hospital patients, service dogs helping disabled people, cats choosing to stay indoors when they could easily leave, horses forming bonds with specific riders, birds mimicking human speech not for survival but apparently for social connection. Each example chipped away at what the textbook claimed was impossible. Lux compiled the findings into a preliminary report. We have documented 47 species on Earth that have been domesticated to some degree. 12 of them are predators, 8 are prey animals, The rest are omnivores or species that do not fit clear predator-prey categories. In every case, the relationship appears to involve genuine behavioral modification without genetic engineering. The textbook will need a complete revision of Section 4, Professor Quinn admitted. Possibly Section 7 as well. This changes our understanding of how evolution can work when intelligence is involved. Daniel looked at Scout, still sleeping peacefully in a room full of aliens who had spent weeks studying her. She had no idea she was rewriting scientific laws. She just knew she was with her human, and that was enough. "Earth isn't weird," he said quietly. "We're just honest about what's possible." The demonstration chamber was built for testing dangerous specimens. Reinforced walls, multiple observation windows, emergency containment systems. Daniel stood in the center with Scout, surrounded by equipment designed to handle things that could kill in creative ways. He almost laughed at the absurdity. Professor Quinn spoke through the intercom system. "We need to establish baseline behaviors. The Academy Board wants empirical data, not just observation reports. Are you ready?" "As ready as we'll be," Daniel replied. Scout sat beside him, looking around with interest at all the new smells and sounds. The testing protocols had been designed by a committee of 12 professors, each wanting to prove or disprove different aspects of the human-dog bond. Daniel had reviewed them all and agreed, though some seemed unnecessarily complicated for what was essentially just watching a dog be a dog. Arya entered through the secondary door, wearing what looked like protective gear. "First test. Prey drive response. I will act as a fleeing target. According to textbook predictions, a predator will instinctively pursue. Scout's been trained not to chase people," Daniel warned. "We shall see." Arya moved to the far end of the chamber, then began running erratically, mimicking prey behavior. Scout watched with mild interest, head tilting slightly. She looked up at Daniel as if asking what the strange alien was doing. "Don't chase," Daniel said simply. Scout sat down and yawned. Arya stopped running, breathing hard. Impossible. I triggered every prey response pattern. Any normal predator would have pursued. "Scout's not a normal predator," Daniel said. "She's been living with humans her whole life. She knows not to chase people." Lux's voice came through the speakers. "Note that the inhibition appears learned, not genetic. The instinct may still exist, but behavioral training overrides it. This suggests intelligence sufficient for complex rule following." The next test involved food. A research assistant placed a large piece of meat on the floor, then left the chamber. Scout looked at it, then looked at Daniel. "Wait," he commanded. Scout waited, even as the smell of fresh meat filled the chamber. Drool gathered at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes stayed locked on the food. But she did not move. 5 minutes passed. Professor Quinn made notes. 10 minutes. Scout's tail twitched, but she held position. "Okay, get it," Daniel finally said. Scout bounded forward and grabbed the meat, eating quickly but not frantically. When she finished, she returned to Daniel's side. "Delayed gratification," Clicktor observed from behind the glass. She wanted the food immediately but waited for permission. This shows impulse control beyond what we see in most predators. Arya had removed her protective gear and was studying the data feeds. "Let us test the bond claim." "Daniel, leave the chamber. We will see how Scout reacts to your absence." Daniel hesitated. She might get anxious. "That is what we want to measure." He gave Scout a hand signal to stay, then walked out through the main door. Through the observation window, he watched his dog. For the first minute, Scout sat calmly where he had left her. Then her ears perked up, swiveling toward the door. She stood and walked over, sniffing at the gap underneath. A soft whine escaped her throat. Heart rate increasing, Lux reported. Stress hormones rising. She is experiencing separation anxiety. 2 minutes. Scout paced back and forth. 3 minutes. She began pawing at the door. 4 minutes. She let out a sharp bark, then another. "Bring him back," Professor Quinn ordered. "We have sufficient data." Daniel re-entered the chamber. Scout rushed to him immediately, tail wagging frantically, pressing against his legs. He knelt down and she licked his face, making the huffing sound that dogs make when they are relieved. "The attachment is genuine," Professor Quinn said quietly. She experienced distress at the separation and immediate relief at reunion. "This is bonding behavior." The test continued for hours. Scout demonstrated her ability to follow complex commands, to distinguish between different hand signals, to respond to voice tone rather than just words. She showed protectiveness when a stranger approached Daniel aggressively in a staged scenario, placing herself between them and growling a warning, but immediately stopped when Daniel said it was okay. Then came the test Daniel had been worried about. "We need to see genuine protective instinct," Arya explained. "Not trained behavior, but true predator response." She had convinced the research team to stage a realistic threat scenario. Daniel stood in the center of the chamber while a security drone, programmed to appear dangerous, descended from the ceiling. It was designed to look threatening to most species, all sharp angles and aggressive movement patterns. Scout's reaction was immediate. She stepped in front of Daniel, her posture changing entirely. The friendly dog disappeared, replaced by something older, something that remembered wolves. Her lips pulled back from her teeth. A deep growl rumbled from her chest. Every muscle tensed, ready to fight. The drone moved closer. Scout barked loud and sharp, a warning. When it continued approaching, she lunged forward, snapping at it with those predatory jaws. The drone retreated as programmed, and Scout maintained her position between it and Daniel, not pursuing but not yielding ground either. "Down, girl," Daniel said gently. "It's okay. Stand down." Scout held her position for another moment, then slowly relaxed. The wolf faded back into dog. She returned to Daniel's side, still alert but no longer aggressive. The chamber went silent except for Scout's panting. "That was remarkable," Professor Quinn finally said. "She accessed full predator instincts in defense of you, then disengaged immediately on command. The control is extraordinary." Arya's scales had shifted to a darker green. "I have never seen anything like it." She was prepared to fight something larger than herself. No hesitation. Complete commitment to protecting her human. "That's what dogs do," Daniel said, stroking Scout's head. "They protect their pack." "But you're not her pack," Clictor pointed out. "You are a different species. There is no genetic imperative for this behavior." "There doesn't need to be a genetic imperative," Daniel replied. "There just needs to be love." The word hung in the air. Several researchers shifted uncomfortably. Love was not a variable in their equations. Lux approached the observation window, their crystalline form refracting light in thoughtful patterns. "I have been analyzing the data from all tests. Scout demonstrates clear intelligence, emotional capacity, and decision-making ability. But more than that, she demonstrates purpose. She has chosen you as her human, not through instinct or training alone, but through what appears to be genuine attachment. Every dog is like this," Daniel said. "Millions of them on Earth, all forming these bonds, all choosing their humans." Professor Quinn pulled up the textbook on her display. "Chapter 9, Section 2. It states that animals act solely on instinct and conditioning. There is no room for choice or emotional attachment beyond basic pack dynamics within a species. We have taught this as fact for generations. Then it's time to teach something new," Arya said. She had been the most skeptical at first, but now her voice carried conviction. "I grew up believing predators were simple creatures driven by hunger and territory. But Scout is not simple. None of Earth's domesticated animals are simple." The research team gathered in the observation room after the tests concluded. Holographic displays showed every measurement, every data point, every moment of Scout's behavior. "We need to present these findings to the full faculty," Professor Quinn announced. "This goes beyond a single student's project. This challenges fundamental assumptions about evolution, animal intelligence, and the nature of domestication itself." Daniel looked through the window at Scout, who had curled up on a mat in the corner of the chamber, exhausted from all the tests but content. She trusted him completely, even in this strange place full of aliens and machines. "When do we present?" he asked. 3 days, Professor Quinn replied. "The Grand Symposium. Every major department head will be there. Many will be skeptical. Some will be hostile. The textbook is deeply entrenched in galactic scientific thought. We have the data," Lux said confidently. "Numbers do not lie." "No," Arya agreed. "But they can be ignored if people do not want to believe them." Daniel watched Scout sleep. A small dog from Earth, now the subject of intense scientific scrutiny across multiple star systems. She had no idea she was starting a revolution in biological theory. She just knew she had done a good job today and her human was proud of her. That was enough. The Grand Symposium Hall held representatives from 47 different worlds. Daniel had never seen so much diversity in one space. Some attendees sat in traditional seats. Others floated in gravity fields. A few existed only as holographic projections transmitted across light years. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to render hundreds of languages into mutually comprehensible concepts. Scout stayed close to Daniel's leg, sensing his nervousness. She had been bathed and groomed for the occasion, looking her absolute best. Not that it mattered to the assembled scientists, but Daniel wanted to show respect for the magnitude of what they were attempting. Professor Quinn stood at the central podium, her blue feathers immaculate under the lights. Honored colleagues, we have gathered to discuss findings that challenge our understanding of evolutionary biology. I ask for open minds and rigorous thinking. What we present today comes with extensive documentation and empirical evidence. An elderly professor from the front row, an amphibious being whose species had been studying xenobiology for 5,000 years, raised a webbed hand. Before we begin, I must state my skepticism. The textbook has served us well for millennia. Claims that it is fundamentally wrong should be met with extreme scrutiny. Agreed, Professor Quinn replied, which is why we have spent weeks verifying every detail. Mr. Reed, if you would join me. Daniel walked to the podium with Scout. Hundreds of eyes, sensors, and other perception organs focused on them. He took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I arrived at this academy believing Earth had something unique to offer galactic science. I was told Earth was too new, too primitive to challenge established knowledge. Today I am going to show you why that assumption was wrong. He activated the presentation. The first image showed a human child sleeping with a large dog, curled protectively around them. This is normal on Earth, Daniel said. A predator sleeping beside a vulnerable member of another species. Not trained to tolerate this. Not genetically engineered. Choosing to do it because the bond between human and dog makes this natural. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Daniel continued, showing image after image. Dogs guiding blind humans. Dogs detecting diseases. Dogs comforting people in distress. Each example accompanied by genetic data proving no artificial modification. Arya stepped forward to present the technical findings. The genetic divergence between dogs and their wolf ancestors is minimal, approximately 2%. Yet behavioral differences are profound. This was accomplished through selective breeding based on temperament, not physical modification. The timeline suggests this process began over 30,000 Earth years ago, before humans had any technology we would recognize as advanced. Impossible, someone called from the middle rows. Domestication requires understanding of genetics. It requires understanding of behavior, Arya corrected. Ancient humans did not know about DNA, but they knew which animals were friendly. They kept those animals close. Those animals had offspring. Over generations, friendliness became the norm. Lux projected a three-dimensional model of Scout's brain. Neurological scans show structures associated with emotional bonding, social cognition, and cross-species empathy. These structures exist in all dogs we have sampled from Earth's database. They appear to be evolutionary adaptations specifically for living with humans. The elderly professor who had spoken earlier stood slowly. You are claiming that a predator species evolved to emotionally bond with prey? That contradicts Principle 7 of established evolutionary theory. Yes, sir, Daniel said firmly. It does, because Principle 7 is incomplete. The room erupted in voices. Professor Quinn raised a wing for silence. Please allow the presentation to continue. We will address all questions afterward. Daniel showed the test results from the demonstration chamber. Scout's ability to control predatory instincts, her protective behavior, her capacity for delayed gratification and complex rule following. Each data point supported by multiple verification methods. Then he showed something even more compelling. Video footage from Earth showing dozens of different domesticated species. Cats bringing gifts to their humans. Horses refusing to leave injured riders. Parrots showing clear signs of grief when separated from their bonded humans. Cows seeking human contact for comfort, not just food. Earth's domestication is not limited to one species or one type of relationship, Daniel explained. We have formed bonds with predators, prey, omnivores, birds, reptiles, and more. In each case, the relationship involves genuine behavioral modification through natural selection, not genetic engineering. A crystalline being in the back, representing one of the oldest civilizations in known space, spoke with a voice like chimes. If what you say is true, why has no other world discovered this? We have studied thousands of planets with intelligent life. None show this pattern. Daniel had expected this question, maybe because no other species tried. Or maybe they tried and failed. Humans succeeded because we offered something beyond just food and shelter. We offered companionship, emotional connection. We treated animals as individuals worthy of care. That is sentiment, not science, the elderly professor objected. Is it? Lux countered. We have measured the neurochemical responses. When Daniel interacts with Scout, both release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. This is a biological response to emotional connection. The sentiment creates measurable scientific effects. Professor Quinn stepped forward again. I have taught from the standard textbook for 40 years. I believed its principles were universal. But the evidence from Earth is irrefutable. We must acknowledge that our understanding was incomplete. You are asking us to rewrite centuries of accumulated knowledge based on one anomalous world. The elderly professor said, I am asking you to expand our knowledge based on new data. Professor Quinn replied, that is what science demands. The debate raged for over an hour. Some professors defended the textbook vigorously. Others saw the implications immediately and wanted to begin new research programs. A few suggested Earth should be quarantined as a biological anomaly. Finally, the symposium director, a gaseous entity that communicated through color changes in its containment field, called for order. We will put this to a formal vote. Should the findings from Earth warrant a review and potential revision of the Galactic Standard Textbook of Evolution? The vote was not unanimous. 40% of attendees voted against, citing insufficient data or unwillingness to overturn established doctrine. But 60% voted in favor. It was enough. The director's colors shifted to indicate acceptance. A review committee will be formed. Professor Quinn will chair it. All relevant data from Earth will be examined. If the findings hold under scrutiny, the textbook will be revised accordingly. Daniel felt something release in his chest. They had done it. Not a complete victory, but a beginning. As the symposium ended and attendees filed out, many approached to examine Scout more closely. The dog handled the attention with patient dignity, allowing aliens to scan her, touch her, study her from every angle. The elderly professor who had been most vocal in opposition approached last. He looked at Scout for a long moment. I still have doubts, he said to Daniel, but I cannot deny the data. Perhaps there is more to learn about the nature of intelligence and relationship than I thought. That is all we ask, Daniel replied. Just openness to the possibility. The professor knelt down with some difficulty. Scout approached him cautiously, then gently licked his webbed hand. He jerked back in surprise, then slowly extended his hand again. This time he allowed it. Extraordinary, he whispered. Absolutely extraordinary. That evening, Daniel sat in his quarters with Scout curled up beside him. His personal communicator showed messages from Earth. The scientific community back home was celebrating. News agencies wanted interviews. His parents sent a video of them crying happy tears. Professor Quinn had sent a private message. You have changed the course of galactic biology. Whatever else happens in your career, you have already made history. Arya appeared at his door. Along with Lux, they had brought what passed for celebration drinks in their respective cultures. To Earth, Arya said, raising her container. The world that made the textbook look foolish. To Scout, Lux added. The small scavenger who was neither small nor a scavenger. To new understanding, Daniel said. They drank together, an unlikely group brought together by a dog. Scout wagged her tail, happy simply because her human was happy. Outside the window, stars glittered across the darkness. Somewhere among them was Earth, a small world that had just taught the galaxy something new about the nature of life itself. And in a research facility on the other side of the station, copies of the Galactic Standard Textbook of Evolution were already being flagged for revision. Chapter 17 would never be the same. The revolution had begun with a bark and a wagging tail. Sometimes, Daniel thought, that was exactly how revolutions should start. 6 months had passed since the symposium. The xenobiology wing of Galactic Academy looked completely different now. What had been a single research room had expanded into an entire department dedicated to studying cooperative evolution, the term they had coined for what Earth demonstrated. Daniel walked through corridors that now displayed images from dozens of worlds. Species from across the galaxy had begun examining their own planet's fauna with new eyes, looking for relationships they had previously dismissed or overlooked. Some had found nothing, but others had discovered early-stage bonds between species that had gone unnoticed because no one thought to look. Professor Quinn had been promoted to department chair. Her office was twice the size of before, filled with displays showing research projects spanning 15 star systems. She looked up when Daniel entered, Scout trotting beside him as always. "Ah, perfect timing," she said. "I wanted to show you something." She activated a holographic display. It showed a planet Daniel did not recognize, with purple vegetation and twin moons. This is Talon 3, homeworld of the Wraith. They began a domestication program 6 months ago, following Earth's example. Look, the image changed to show a large, lizard-like creature sitting calmly while a Wraith child played near it. The creature was clearly predatory, with sharp claws and powerful jaws. But it watched the child with what could only be called gentleness. They started with wild specimens known for being less aggressive, Professor Quinn explained, using Earth's methods of selective breeding based on temperament. Already they are seeing behavioral changes. It is early yet, but promising. "That's amazing," Daniel said. "It is your influence. Earth's influence. The galaxy is learning." She pulled up another display. "The textbook revision is almost complete. First major update in 500 years. Chapter 17 has been entirely rewritten. Chapter 23 has a new section on emotional bonding across species. Your name is cited 47 times. Daniel felt overwhelmed. "I just brought my dog to school." "You brought proof that changed everything." Professor Quinn's feathers rustled with what he had learned to recognize as satisfaction. "The review committee finished their work last week. Every claim we made has been verified. Earth's domestication process is now recognized as a unique evolutionary pathway that was previously unknown to galactic science." Arya entered the office without knocking, as had become her habit. She had taken a position as assistant researcher in the new department, focusing on predator domestication. Her scales gleamed with fresh polish. "Daniel, you need to see this now." She pulled up a newsfeed on her personal display. The headline read, 20 systems begin Earth-style animal companionship programs. The report showed footage from multiple worlds. Aliens of various species interacting with animals in ways that mimicked human-pet relationships. Some were awkward, clearly still learning. Others showed genuine affection developing. "It is becoming a trend," Arya said with something like amusement. "Everyone wants what Earth has. Companion animals are the new status symbol in some sectors." "That's not why we did this," Daniel protested. "No, but it is a consequence." Lux materialized in the doorway, their crystalline form catching the light. "Social movements are unpredictable. You showed that bonds with animals are possible and beneficial. Now everyone wants to experience it." Professor Quinn brought up a priority message that had just arrived. "Speaking of consequences, the Galactic Council has formally requested Earth's assistance in establishing guidelines for ethical domestication practices. They want to ensure other worlds do not harm animals in their eagerness to replicate your success. Earth would be happy to help," Daniel said. He had been in communication with officials back home regularly. The sudden interest in Earth's knowledge had elevated the planet's status considerably in galactic politics. Scout, who had been lying quietly during the conversation, suddenly stood and walked to the window. She stared out at the stars, tail wagging slowly. "She does that sometimes," Daniel noted. "I think she knows Earth is out there somewhere. Or she simply likes looking at lights," Professor Quinn suggested. "We still cannot fully interpret every behavior." "Maybe that's okay," Lux said. "Mystery is acceptable. We do not need to understand everything to appreciate it." A chime indicated an incoming call. Professor Quinn accepted it, and a holographic figure appeared. An elderly human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Dr. Patricia Williams, the woman introduced herself. "Director of the International Animal Welfare Institute on Earth. I am calling to discuss the establishment of a joint Earth galactic program for domestication research and animal welfare." Over the next hour, they discussed plans for exchange programs, research collaborations, and educational initiatives. Earth would send specialists in animal behavior to other worlds. In return, Earth would receive technology and knowledge from more advanced civilizations. "We are also proposing a new field of study," Dr. Williams said. "Interspecies psychology, the formal study of bonds between different species. Earth has 30,000 years of practical experience. Combined with galactic scientific methodology, we could develop comprehensive understanding. The Academy would absolutely support such a program," Professor Quinn said immediately. After the call ended, Daniel sat quietly processing everything. Scout came and rested her head on his knee, sensing his emotional state as she always did. "Are you well?" Arya asked, "Just thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I was just a student from a primitive world. Now Earth is helping establish galactic policy." "Your world was never primitive," Lux corrected. "You simply developed differently. While others focused on technology and expansion, humans apparently focused on connection. Different does not mean lesser." Professor Quinn stood and walked to her window, looking out at the academy grounds below. Students from hundreds of species moved between buildings. Many now walked with small creatures beside them, early attempts at forming Earth-style bonds. "I have been thinking about why Earth succeeded where others did not," she said. "I believe it comes down to empathy. Humans saw animals not as resources or curiosities, but as individuals. You extended your social circles beyond your own species. That required a kind of emotional intelligence that technical intelligence alone cannot provide. Other species have empathy," Daniel pointed out. "Within their own kind, yes, but extending it so broadly, so naturally, that appears to be rare. Perhaps unique to humans." She turned back to them. "The textbook now includes a new principle. Principle 41. Advanced intelligence can create evolutionary pathways through intentional behavioral selection, resulting in cooperative relationships that benefit both species involved." "The human principle," Arya said. "That is what some are calling it." Daniel felt his face flush. "That seems presumptuous." "It is accurate," Lux stated. "Humans discovered it. Humans proved it." The name fits. A message appeared on Daniel's display. His academic advisor wanted to discuss his thesis project. Now that the domestication research was established, he needed to focus on his own studies. "I should go," he said, standing. "Scout needs exercise anyway." As he left the office with his dog, Arya called after him. "Daniel, thank you. For being stubborn enough to challenge the textbook. For being brave enough to show us we were wrong." He smiled back at her. "Someone once told me that new species joining the academy always think they are special. Turns out Earth was special, just not in the way anyone expected." Walking through the academy grounds, Daniel noticed the changes everywhere. A dedicated park area where students brought their companion animals. New courses in the curriculum about cross-species bonding. Research labs studying the neurochemistry of attachment. A group of young students approached nervously. "Excuse me, are you Daniel Reed? The human with the famous dog?" "That's me. Could we meet, Scout?" "We are studying Earth's domestication methods in our intro course," Daniel agreed. And Scout performed her usual magic, being friendly and patient while the students examined her, asked questions and marveled at how responsive she was. One student, a small insectoid being, asked, "How did you know she would be friendly? When you first got her, how did you know she would not hurt you?" "I didn't know for certain," Daniel admitted. "But thousands of generations of dogs had been friendly to humans before her. It was in her nature. We trusted each other." "Trust," the student repeated. "Our professor says that is the foundation. Trust between different species." After the students left, Daniel found a quiet spot under what passed for a tree on the station. An imported plant from some world with blue sunlight. Scout lay down beside him, content to rest in companionable silence. His communicator chimed. A message from home. His younger sister had just adopted her first dog, inspired by all the attention Scout had received. The attached image showed her laughing as a puppy licked her face. Normal life on Earth continuing as it always had. Humans and dogs together. A partnership so natural that no one there questioned it. But here, light years from home, that simple relationship had reshaped how billions of beings understood life itself. Scout rolled onto her back, wanting a belly rub. Daniel obliged, and she made the contented grumbling sound that meant she was perfectly happy. "You know you are famous, right?" he told her. "You changed the galaxy." Scout's tail thumped against the ground. She did not care about fame or textbooks or galactic policy. She cared that her human was there, giving her attention, making her feel safe and loved. Maybe that was the real lesson, Daniel thought. In a galaxy obsessed with technology, expansion, and knowledge, sometimes the most revolutionary thing was simple connection. Being present for another being, caring about their well-being, forming bonds that transcended biological programming. Earth had not discovered faster than light travel first, had not built the most impressive cities or the most powerful weapons, But Earth had learned to love across species barriers. And that, it turned out, was knowledge the galaxy desperately needed. A year ago, Daniel had worried about being dismissed as a primitive. Now he understood that Earth had never been primitive, just different. And that difference was exactly what the galaxy needed to move forward. Scout sat up suddenly, ears perked. Another student was approaching with what looked like a newly acquired companion, a small furry creature that seemed nervous. "Could you help?" the student asked. "I read your research, but I am unsure how to make my new friend comfortable." Daniel smiled. "Of course. The first thing is to move slowly and let them come to you." As he helped the student, Scout lay down nearby, serving as a calm example for the nervous creature. This was the future, Daniel realized. Not just research and papers, but practical knowledge spreading across the galaxy, one bond at a time. The textbook had been wrong, but now it was being rewritten. And Earth, the small world that everyone had underestimated, was teaching the galaxy how to be better, all because of a dog named Scout who had simply been herself.